The question that I most ask is, what is the perfect cruising boat? The answer is that really depends on the individual asking that question and what they really want to do with the boat. Just to give you an idea of what we did, and by listening to what we did, will give you a good indication whether you should be choosing a catamaran or a monohull for extended cruising. Myself and my wife left Simonstown in South Africa, and we sailed to St. Helena Island and then on to Ascension Island. From there we sailed to Salvador in Brazil. We then followed the Brazilian coastline from Salvador all the way to Fortaleza, with obviously a lot of stops in between. To give you an indication of the amount of miles, from Simonstown to St. Helena Island, it's about 1,700. From there to Ascension, about another 200. From Ascension Island to Brazil, about 1,400 nautical miles. And then the Brazilian coastline was probably another 800 or 900, maybe 1,000. And then from Fortaleza on to Trinidad was another 1,800. So, you know, give and take probably 5,500, 6,000 nautical miles that we did on a monohull. We then chartered in the British Virgin Islands for a 5-year period. We ended up with 108 charters. Those were for 6 people over a 7-night period. So each charter probably worked out between maybe 30 and 40 miles, so times 100. We also delivered boats from the British Virgin Islands to the Annapolis Boat Show, and that's 700 up to, from the British Virgins up to Annapolis is about 700-800 miles, and then the same distance back again, depending whether you go through the intercoastal waterway or whether you directly head out to sea. We also spent 1.5 years in the Seychelles, chartering on a catamaran. So in the British Virgin Islands, our chartering was done on a 45-foot Fontaine Payot catamaran. We chartered in the Seychelles on a 50-foot Mayotte and catamaran. Our deliveries, we delivered a 50-foot Mayotte up to, from the British Virgin Islands up to Annapolis for the boat show, and we brought a 37-foot catamaran down from Annapolis to the British Virgin Islands. Now, I would estimate my catamaran miles to be probably in the region of 5,000 or so. I'll talk about the pros and the cons of each. Now, one of the cons of a monohull is definitely space. If you're going to take an extended family, you may want to look at a catamaran. However, if it's maybe 2 people or 3 or even 4 people, I won't stretch it past 4, then a monohull might be the choice for you. We found that in our monohull, especially during heavy weather, she actually held up quite well. Although in that heavy weather we had 5 knockdowns, and we also greeted each other and we accepted death. The next day my wife said, you know, last night we accepted death, this morning we should accept life. And that was really a life-changing experience. Now, the big benefit of a monohull in heavy weather is that she will, even if she does have sails up, as the wind blows, the sails will just go and lie down, and the wind will literally go over because of the healing effect of monohulls. And that's a big savior, and I firmly believe that that saved us during that storm, because we still had a little bit of mainsail up which we couldn't get down. So in 60 knots of wind, she did that quite a lot. I'll link a video of how we survived that storm for you. Now, the other thing about a monohull is that you need to consider is the speed in which you will circumnavigate or do your extended cruising. We averaged only about 60 miles per day. It took us 28 days to go from Simonstown to St. Helena. But that wasn't the monohull's fault. That was our own fault. We had no idea what we were doing. We left South Africa with 43 hours of experience. So the learning curve was quite steep, but we made it. The speed aspect, however, is extremely important, because if you have a look at a trip like Simonstown to St. Helena, that trip in a catamaran will take you about 8 days or maybe 7. Because on a catamaran, let's say for example, well, if you can average 10 knots, that's 240 miles a day. That's actually quite good going. So on a catamaran you may find that you'll have a speed of 200 versus our 60, and that's a huge difference. Now, a lot of cruising folks will tell you that you don't want to waste time in crossing oceans or doing extended sea work to get to your next destination. Cruising is all about anchoring off and going onto land and experiencing different cultures, and not so much spending time out at sea where you are at risk. Now, talking about risk, your risk window on a monohull will obviously be much more than on a catamaran. 28 days versus 8 days to get from A to B is a huge difference in the amount of risk that you will take. From a budgetary point of view, a monohull for a lot of people will also make a lot of sense. It will not break the bank. Currently now in South Africa there are good vessels for sale in the region of about 360,000, which roughly is about 18,000 US dollars, that you can get a very decent boat to do extended cruising with. The other main benefit of a monohull is the maintenance. On a catamaran we often refer to them as double trouble, so the catamaran's maintenance is quite exorbitant, and that has to do with the amount of money that you have. Another big advantage of having a monohull is that on the maintenance side, it really doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. You can always, if you want to do anti-fouling, which in terms of any other boat you might have to be lifted out, but you can easily during low tide just beach a monohull, anti-foul the one side, wait for the tide, turn it around and anti-foul the other side. So there's always ways and means to save money. The other big money saver for a monohull is our mooring fees. A lot of marinas lately will charge you double for catamarans. As they say, it takes double the space. So, what about catamarans? Catamarans have got a lot of space. Compared to monohulls, they are really a joy in terms of space. Also because of that, if you do need to make money overseas as you extensively cruise, they might be a good call, because you can work in the charter industry with a catamaran. If you plan to do so, just find out about all the regulations that you need and all the hoops that you might need to go through, like work permits and all of that kind of stuff. but that is definitely a consideration. Now, the other huge plus for a catamaran is the speed. As I said earlier, you don't want to spend a lot of time crossing oceans, and this is where a catamaran shines. They can really do that quite fast. The amount of people that you can take, if you have a family and want to take some friends cruising, that's definitely a possibility. And also it will make much lighter work of crossing oceans if you have more crew. The stifling thing about catamarans is double trouble. We call them double trouble for a specific reason. Man, when it comes to maintenance, they can really kill you. They really cost a lot of money. As I said earlier, if you go into marina, you're going to pay double berthing fees. Catamarans need double anti-fouling, they need double engine work, they need double engine maintenance, and just all in all, because of the amount of space that you have, even painting your deck is going to be quite expensive. The other major drawback for me in terms of catamarans is definitely catamaran slam. Now, as the sea goes into the two pontoons, it will slap up from underneath and cause catamaran slam. We delivered a 37-foot catamaran from the Annapolis Boat Show down to the British Virgin Islands, and our nickname for that boat was Bronco Billy. Man, I tell you, that thing just slammed. It was unpleasant. I don't want to have that boat for free. I don't think that I'll ever cross any ocean with a 37-foot catamaran because of that reason. Now, as far as design is concerned, the lower those cats are, the more they will slam. The higher they are, the less. So just in terms of a general size, when it comes to crossing oceans, a lot of cruising people, including myself, will tell you, do not buy anything less than 40 feet. 40 feet is about the length where catamaran slam starts subsiding. Now, the other main negative for me in terms of catamarans, except for slam and maintenance, is heavy weather. I think that catamarans in heavy weather, just my opinion, will be more difficult to handle, and you might be in deeper trouble in heavy weather if you are on a catamaran. The huge benefit, as I said, is that your window of risk will be much, much less. You'll cross that ocean much, much faster. If you do get into heavy weather with a catamaran, it's going to be very, very difficult. In a monohull, our monohull, we soon realized that you need to keep the bow 30 degrees into the swell and just ride it out like that. Whereas your main problem on a monohull would be to have a knockdown, but she will still roll. If she does roll over, if you're unlucky enough that she rolls over, you might lose your mast and stuff, but she will still probably remain floated if she's not holed. So they are little bubbles of comfort out there in the ocean. And they really can handle heavy weather. They are made for that. Catamarans, not so much. We were in heavy weather with catamarans, and I tell you, it was not a pleasant experience. The thing with cats is you need to rather surf down it and not face it, because if you do face swells head on with catamarans, what will happen, it will just turn turtle on you. It will just go like that. Now again, the positive side, if one can say that, is that once a catamaran does flip over and lies turtle, you have a huge area that you can use as a life raft. You won't go far, but at least that is a possibility. And also for that reason, a lot of catamarans does have the life rafts like on the outside. So if you do turn turtle, you get the life raft out of there like that. I've also read stories where yachties have taken a tool so that they can cut a piece of glass fiber out so that they can still get inside of the catamaran should in the event of turning turtle. Now, the big thing in a storm with the catamaran is to rather surf down those waves while slowing her down, because you don't want the swell to overtake you. As you surf down, as a swell overtakes you, you will literally go with your nose into this swell. If you're too fast, you'll go into that swell. This swell will come and just push you over and you'll turn turtle. So the idea would be to surf down but be slower than those swells, which will mean to have drogues on her stern or whatever means you have to throw that out on your stern to slow that catamaran down. The motion I found for me was very, very unpleasant. On a monohull, you sort of like know what to expect, because you know she'll do that. As the swell comes, she'll go and lie down and then slowly creak back up again. And that's a consistent kind of motion that you get used to. It sounds easy, but no, it's not. But you do get used to that after hours of handling that. On a catamaran, I just was never comfortable with that kind of swaying motion. It sort of like got to me. So the other major consideration when you want to buy something for extended cruising will obviously be budget. So what would I do? Well, if it's only myself and my wife that now want to cross the ocean again, I'll definitely look at a small monohull, because of budget. The kind of sizes that we'll look at would basically be between 31.5 foot, like a Mura, and they are reasonably cheap, to something like an Lavranos 34, which would also be quite feasible. And if I really wanted steel, I'll go for a Van der Stad 36 maybe, but as you can hear, I'll keep it between 32 and 36 feet, and that would be more than ideal for the two of us. Also keep our maintenance down. We know we won't be able to make money out of that boat, but you know, for two people that want to circumnavigate, I think that is the way to go on a budget. If I won the lottery tomorrow, then I'll buy an X5 50-foot catamaran and circumnavigate the globe. That for me is my ideal boat. I love them to bits, and as I said, I'll take the chance with the catamaran in heavy weather then, because lately, with the ability to have weather forecasts at your fingertips when you're out there, is a huge advantage. That's something that we did not have. Our weather report was pretty much line of sight. If we saw a cargo boat, then we'll get onto the VHF and ask them for the weather report, and then take it from there. So we were pretty much blind out there, which is not a good thing. Again, if I had all the money in the world, I'll definitely buy a 50-foot catamaran. And the other benefit of ducking heavy weather on a catamaran, if you have the forecast, you will have the speed to actually go around the low or whatever the case may be. So that in a nutshell is it. I hope you found this informative, and please leave a comment for me if you do have any questions. I'm here to try and assist, and I'll do everything in my ability to answer. Thank you ever so much. Have a great day.